I get sent a lot of music gear, and not all the gear that I'm sent ends up in a review or a demo here on the channel. When I review gear, I'm always looking for what makes it special, if there's something unique about it, maybe the sound, maybe the design, and some of the gear I'm sent just isn't very inspiring. Now this here is an instrument that actually surprised me. This is the Liven LOFI 12. And to be totally honest, I didn't plan to make this video here about it because I wasn't a big fan of the previous Liven, the bass and beats version. I just didn't think that it sounded that good. But then I tried the LOFI 12 and yeah, I'm not gonna say anything. I'm just gonna let you be the judge of it. Here's a couple of sound demos. So what is the Liven 12-bit? Well, as the color scheme and the 12-bit in the name kind of suggests, it's a lo-fi sampler. So in short, it's a 4-track sampler slash groovebox. It can play samples polyphonically. It has 128 sample slots and it samples in 16-bit, 12 or 24 kilohertz. And there's also a 12-bit mode for even more lo-fi vibes. This is definitely not your typical modern sampler. This is definitely lo-fi, old school. So the samples that you can record can be 2 seconds or 4 seconds, depending on the kilohertz setting that you choose. It also sports a per track arpeggiator, per track insert effect, a master reverb, and that's a send effect. And there's also a per track filter and per track LFO. And no, there's no time stretching on it, and even though it's supposed to be lo-fi, old school, I think that on a modern sampler, regardless of price, time stretching algorithm is always very welcome, but there isn't one. When I first tried the LOFI 12, I was actually surprised at how mellow and vibey the results were, even for synth sounds. So let's make a beat from scratch. We press pattern, we're in number 9, we have a kick, and now we can use the bank here to select between different banks of samples. So we'll start by finding a drum loop that we like. Like this one. You can also use one of the 4 tracks here to program a drum beat using the steps here. So by sample locking a sample to each step. Let's go to the second track, and I want this little synth sound. What we can do is we can increase the reverb for it. And I want an arpeggiator. So we hold function and we go through different modes. So there's different modes here. We have poly, mono, legato. So with legato enabled. And if I don't like what I've recorded, I can just press clear, press the track. Okay, let's record our bass line. So we lengthen the track. So length, let's do 32. And if you're thinking this doesn't sound too good, I'm gonna click off. No, stick around. It will sound a lot better soon, I promise. And if we feel like the ARP is a little bit too rigid, we have the laid back function. This is kind of nice. So it basically delays the samples a little bit. So it creates an interesting groove. And you can sequence the laid back parameter per step as well to create interesting grooves. So yeah, and we also have swing. So let's see here. So if we increase this value a lot, you can hear that the ARP is kind of lagging behind. So let's introduce a little bit. It's a subtle difference, but it's kind of nice. And on the bass, or rather on the ARP here, we can introduce a filter. So there are multiple filter types. High pass, band pass, different low pass filters. There's a depth and time setting here as well. And there's also resonance. And there's an LFO, so we can use that to control the filter. We can also use it to control the pitch if we want to. And here we could go in, we could parameter lock. So you're using these buttons over here to go between different pages, so different bars in the sequencer. And we have something called PRM rec. So this is for parameter recordings. So let's go to the last step here, hit record, and make sure the PRM rec is green. And we can increase the rate here. So now I've increased the rate of the LFO here per step here. And let's add some pitch. We can try and add some effect to the bass. So you hit function, effects. There are chorus, flanger, delay. I think this is a crush, bit crusher maybe. I'm not entirely sure. Distortion, low pass filter, high pass filter, isolator, tilt. I don't know if it's tilt EQ. I haven't learned all of the effects. Tremolo, compressor. So let's see here. Can we do a chorus perhaps? You can also change the reverb type. So at the moment, it's Hall, so we can do, for example, infinite. You can also parameter lock the panning. So to recap, you can select different samples. You can turn on the insert effect and use these knobs here to control it. We have the LFO here controlling pitch and filter. We have the release and gate and also an attack setting, so you can increase the attack time. For example, if something's clicking, you can increase the attack time, making it more smooth. And we have the cutoff filter section here. Steps here for the step sequencer, and you play the notes. So hopefully you're with me so far. Here you set the reverb, the total reverb amount, and you can also hit shift here and increase the reverb send per track. Then we have the fourth track here. Let's add some delay. Nice, let's add a filter. Let's do a high pass filter. And now we can turn on the 12-bit mode. So basically taking the sample from 16 bits to 12 bits. So we max out the sequence, so let's do 64 steps, and let's do note here, and let's do 30-second steps. So here you can see that it just speeds up the sequence. So let's program. And clearing steps is super simple. Hold down clear, just press here. And now we can put down do 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 do. Now there's a couple of interesting sequencer features that I want to highlight. So the first one here is probability. So if we go here to our little ARP, and we can mute the tracks, and we hit, let's see here, I think it's shift, yeah. So here you can change the probability from 25 to 100%, I think. And let's turn off the metronome. So when you have an ARP running like this, you've basically recorded the notes into the sequencer, and you can just hit function, or is it shift? No, wait. Yeah, it's shift. It's a little confusing. So you can decrease it, the probability, and find an interesting sweet spot where we get, you know, not a static arpeggio that just runs and runs and runs, but rather comes in and out. And I suppose you could parameter lock the step. So if I hold down step number 1 here, shift. Yeah, seems to work. I'm not sure if that's good, but yeah, you can parameter lock the probability. That's kind of neat. Now, another sequencer feature is the stutter. So you can turn that on and off. And it basically lets you, if I mute the tracks here, lets you hold down steps in the sequence and play them. And here's an example with a beat, which makes it a little bit more clear what you can do with it. And the last sequencer function is hidden over here. This is random on and off. If you turn it on, nothing really happens. But if we press random step here, you can set the length of randomization. So let's see here. If we take 2 here, let's turn it off. You can see how it jumps around. So if I'm not totally mistaken, this value here sets a window between 16 steps, 8 steps, 4 and 2 steps, or 1 step. And this window is where it randomizes what step to play back. This is of course more noticeable when you have a beat. The same with stutter. do it like this. And just the last little thing, if we have a synth sound like this and we increase the reverb, let's do function reverb infinite, increase the reverb, let's add an effect, let's add, say, a delay here. And let's enable the filter, let's do a low pass, let's turn up the LFO and use that to control the filter. Sounds pretty nice. And with the ARP mode. So now in this sequence here, I want to parameter lock some drum sounds. So we hit record here. First step. Here we have a kick. And we're gonna turn up the level. And we're also gonna enable the compressor. I've noticed that enabling the compressor is kind of nice, just to give it a little bit more oomph. And now we can just press this step here and function copy, and we can paste it. Copy, paste. Nice, and now we want a little hi-hat, so let's find a hi-hat. Paste, paste, paste. I think that this is pretty vibey. Next up, let's touch on the sampling. And at first I thought it would be super annoying because you have this overlay that you have to put over the unit if you want to see what the sampling functions actually are. But it's not really the case. You don't really need this. This is more for the advanced stuff. If you want to, for example, enable reverse, you want to loop a sample, if you want to make, say, a little pad that loops. So this is more for the advanced stuff, and we won't go over that in today's video. I think there will be a tutorial out from Sonicware, or maybe Chris Lodi or somebody will make a tutorial for that. So we're just going to touch on quick sampling. So I have my drum brute impact here. Because I felt like sampling it. First, you select the correct bank you want to record into and the sample slot you want to record into, and this is destructive. So I'm going to user bank 1 and slot number 1. And then I think we press function and sample to go into the sampling mode. And I think we press OK. And yeah, don't quote me on this. And then you hit function and sampling. And if you press function and setting, there are different settings for auto-detecting the incoming audio, setting the threshold for recording. So I think we just press record here. And now we press play. And let's see here. Let's press OK. OK again. There's the sample. And you have a total of 4 seconds if you record in the 12 kilohertz mode, I think it is, and 2 seconds if you record in the 24 kilohertz mode. Next up, I want to sample a synthesizer, and I think that the way that most of you will be using this is by sampling a bunch of stuff at one point and then just taking this with you, having fun with it. I don't think it's like a go-to, portable sampler. Something like the Sonicware Sample Trek is a lot better for that, because of course you need the overlay here that I showed you if you want to know what you're actually doing, if you want to edit samples and stuff. So I think just sampling a bunch of one-shots and small loops and stuff, and then take this with you and have fun with it. That's how I foresee most of you using it. There's a pretty nice bass. Let's try and sample this. I'm not entirely sure how well it will sound, but why not try? So as you can see, sampling is pretty straightforward actually. I thought it would be more difficult. And now we're gonna just make a little bit with the sounds we sampled. Let's add a bass. And let's use the last track here. So let's end today's video discussing whether or not you should buy this. First and foremost, I think that the Liven series from Sonicware should be compared with Volcas and Pocket Operators. They are small, fun, portable devices. They are not meant to make a full song from scratch. I mean, you can, because you can chain patterns together on it, but it's definitely not like a workstation like their sample trick. I think you should view it as a portable groove box that you can have a bit of fun with. Maybe it's inspiring. This one was actually very inspiring to me personally. I had a ton of fun with it. And I guess it's the limitations, you know, it doesn't have a ton of functions, it doesn't have a ton of features, the sampling is very basic, but I had a lot of fun with it. And I think that the demos in today's video show that you can get good sounding results out of it. And I think in part it is because of the limitations. So if you want a 4-track portable little groove box that you can have fun with on the side of your main setup, then I think this one could be a lot of fun.